Hello and welcome. My name is Nocturne, and you're watching Noctography Tales. So in this series, we're going back and looking through some of my favourite images. We're going to be talking about the processes used to make them and the amazing stories behind them. So after the success of last week's episode, I wanted to put it to a vote on what image people wanted to see next. So I went on Facebook and uploaded 6 new photos and asked people to vote on which one they wanted to hear the story and the process behind. The one that got the most likes was this one here. The name I chose for this image was Trippin. No other reason that it was a very psychedelic image and we were in somewhat of a crack house looking location, so it just seemed quite fitting. This was taken back in November 2008, so I'd only been light painting for about a year or so. I found the location from a woman I used to work with. She knew what I did, travelled around photographing abandoned places, and she'd always come to me with places that she knew of from her local area, saying, oh, there's this old abandoned house, there's an old abandoned castle, have you seen it, it's here. And I'd go off and explore and find them, and they'd be really, really good hidden gems to explore. And the same for this one. My dad actually, I told him about it, and he knew what it was and where it was, and was able to give me some of the history behind it. It was an old quarry, a rock quarry, back in the day, and I believe the quarry was all dug out and pretty much empty of resources now. And I believe that the owner, who was called Jim Barry, sold up and moved to Tenerife. And during his retirement, his massive farmhouse, farm, buildings, garages, a truck stop, and the quarry were all left for over 40 years to literally rot and go into disrepair. Now, I have many stories about this location, so I will run through a few as we talk about. I honestly can't remember which story goes with which image, but I remember there's quite a lot of interesting stories about this location. So I will go through a few of my favourite with this image and run through some of the others on other images on other episodes. So first we're going to talk about the process behind the image. And this was quite new to me and not a technique that I'd used before, so it was brand new territory. And so we were inside the house. Now, the house was quite hard to get into itself because to stop people getting inside, the local landowner had pushed soil up around all the doors, so you couldn't get in. So we sort of had to use our hands to scrape away enough mud to slide through a very small gap near the back door. The house itself was in relatively good condition. I mean, it wasn't falling down, but there were some, obviously, as we can see in the picture, there's quite a lot of rubble around. There's still a sofa in there. Some of the built-in furniture was still present. Most of the windows were still intact or boarded up, so not completely derelict and falling down, but enough to create some nice photos. So this was one of the back rooms of the house. There was also, behind this room, there was a lounge or two and the stairs. Through that door there was a kitchen, and to the right down that door was a basement, which for the first time we visited there, I didn't actually go down it because it was quite scary. But yeah, so I knew about this location. Me and my friends decided to go, and we'd shoot for hours on end here. And when you go into places like this, the time, and anyone who light paints or urban explores will know this, but when you are in these places, it is a timeless experience. And when I say that, I mean you can go in when it gets dark, 9 o'clock at night, maybe earlier, November time, and you would only realize how long you'd been inside when you were coming back out, and it would be getting light again. You'd be like, oh wow, we've been in there for 10 hours, 8 hours. and the time while you're in there really just like almost stands still or goes really fast in this case. But you don't notice it at all. And even if you come away with maybe like 5, 10 images max, and you're like, wow, it took me 8 hours to create 10 images. But of course, back early in our light painting days, it was still very trial and error. We were learning every day. And, you know, back then as well, the technology wasn't at its peak. So we were in prime sort of noise reduction territory, where you would take a long exposure of 30 seconds, and then it would take another 30 seconds to reduce the noise before you could even see the image. And again, back then we were purists. We didn't shoot RAW. We didn't do anything in Photoshop. We shot large JPEG, and if you got it wrong, you did it again. And the same goes for this image. And I used some new techniques and some new equipment here, so I was getting to grips with that and ironing out some of the kinks and some of the limitations that I faced. So obviously, when I came to this idea, I got the angle in my head first, and I was like, this is a brilliant angle. I really like the width of this room. I'd recently got a 10-22mm lens on a 1.6 cropped sensor, so really quite a nice wide angle lens that I wanted to test out. And I had this really cool idea that it'd be really nice, trippy, psychedelic to have each one of the shelves lit a different colour, and then the doorway to be lit another colour again. And the way I came to this, because, you know, anyone will know when you're light painting in a small space, you'll get bleed, light bleed. So if I'm firing my flash gun into a small cupboard, the flashback will hit me straight in the face and I'll be light painted into the image. So the way I came around this was, we've all heard of pocket wizards. But, you know, back in the day, you know, I was not exactly rich, you know, and poor, and you make and do with your £10 tripods and your shutter releases that are duct taped together because you've trod on them or trapped them in the car door. So I had the poor man's pocket wizard, which was nicknamed the poverty wizard, which I found quite funny because, and they were from China. They were, you know, less than £10, and they would work for a good while, and then they would stop working, and I don't know why, but you would have to just throw them away and get another set. But yeah, I decided that I would use the poverty wizards to paint inside these this cupboard. And what you would do, you would, same as the pocket wizards, you would have your flash gun, and you would put one end of the poverty wizard, the receiver, onto the flash gun. I would then tape a gel over the end of the flash gun and go and put it in the cupboard. I would then come back behind the camera and use the poverty wizard trigger to set the flash off. Then I would have to go back to the cupboard, change the gel to the next colour, put it on the next shelf up, come back behind the camera, fire the next colour. And so on throughout all the shelves. And this was a lengthy process, like just to do, you know, all 5 shelves. And then the doorway as well, because I actually had to go way down into the basement to get the right angle on the red coming up the stairs to hit the door. And obviously you can even see a bit of hot spot on the door where the flash is hit. And I used I think it was a yellow over from the right hand side of the room to light the rest of the room. You can see that really sort of dark shadow coming from behind the sofa, which I absolutely love. And this was a bit of trial and error. This wasn't the first time, you know, it maybe took me, you know, like I said, each shelf I had to do was maybe like a minute or so, because I had to fumble around in the dark, looking for which gel was which. And I think it was about this time that I came up with the Noctography lighting gel system, because you're fumbling around in the dark, you're trying to figure out which gel is which, you don't know what colours they are, so I'm like, I should make these, and I should label them with what they are, green, blue, and from this point on, it really helped to decipher what gels you're using in the dark, because there's nothing worse than saying, oh, I'm going to go do a blue over here, and you've accidentally picked up a purple, and it can ruin a whole shot. So this was probably when Noctography lighting gels were invented as well. So yeah, I would set the camera off, and we would start with the shelves. Like I said, go over, flash, come back, green, flash, purple, flash, orange, flash, purple, flash. Then I would go down the basement stairs, couple of flashes at the door, go to the right hand side of the room, flash, flash, come back to the camera, turn the exposure off, and then have to wait maybe like 10 minutes for the noise to reduce before I could even see whether I'd had a failed attempt or a really decent photo. But even from the first attempt, I knew that I was on something. I was on something really good, and I knew I had to get it just right. And any imperfections would have ruined the illusion of what I was trying to achieve. So I probably did this one a handful of times. Maybe it took me an hour or so. And as you can see, there's a lot of debris on the floor and everywhere. And you go into places like this, and you're negotiating, 6-inch nails sticking up out of the floor. And in rats, mice, badgers, foxes, and so we've seen some weird stuff in abandoned houses. So it's no surprise that we've had to have a tetanus shot or two in these places. But I mean, we're also naive in some areas as well. You sit down and have a rest. There's a couch there. We sat on, and then so. That's pretty much the story behind the image. The settings I was on, I was still on a Canon 30D, 10-pound tripod, 10 to 22mm lens, probably at 10mm, f5.6, ISO 100, and the shot was maybe 5 to 10 minutes. But because we weren't outside, there was that window there would have been covered up with soil, so no one could get in. So there was no ambient light bleeding in from outside, so we didn't have to worry about, overexposing anything. So that was the process behind the image. And now we're going to move on to a couple of the stories that I've faced while at this location. So when I first came to this location, in 2007, it's still very on in my early light painting days, after I learned from a woman I worked with that it existed. And me and a few friends, non-photography friends, who lived in the area, decided to come down and explore, see what was what. And, I remember walking down, and we had to park at the road because I once parked in front of the place, and it didn't go well. I'll get to that in a bit, but we originally parked nowhere near the place. I think I'd parked at my friend's house, and we decided to walk down to try and find it. And as we were walking down this really long sort of pothole-ridden road, and we didn't even know that it was the right place at this time. So we're just walking around looking for this old abandoned house. And we were walking down this little road, and to the right there was I'll say a field. And there was all these holes in the ground, and they were really weird. They were about 6-8 feet long, 2-3 foot wide. And it wasn't, we were walking around and we were like, they're weird, You get going and you sort of daunting, they look like weird graves, like shallow graves. And at that point you're like, I don't like that there could be shallow graves at this place. And we're like, don't worry about it. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure it's perfectly innocent, and they're not graves, and we're not going to die. So you walk down a bit further, and then there was an old, it was like a river or something. There was a little fishing place where people would go fishing, but there was no one there. And then there was an old house. I say an old house, it was inhabited, and there were people living there, and they owned the house, and I don't think they owned the abandoned house, but they owned that house, and they had a little quad bike track business going on there. And we just kept walking. We saw the house at this point. We'd go in, we'd explore. And the house itself and all the buildings on the land were actually on a public footpath. So, anyone who does this kind of thing knows that, public footpaths are common ground where you're allowed to be, and anything on them is generally safe. So we went in, and like I said, the house you couldn't actually get into straight away, but it looked super interesting. And the house was actually divided into 2 houses. It was a giant house, but once we did eventually get inside, there was 2 houses, but we didn't realize it for a long time. And you couldn't get in the front door, so we had to come in the back door. We dug through the mud with our bare hands to get inside. And then it wasn't until we didn't go upstairs for a long time either, because they looked very unstable. So we mainly stayed downstairs, and yeah, we stayed downstairs, and there was, like I said, there was a kitchen, a basement, a lounge, so on. But it wasn't until like a year or two after we'd been there, I said, this house is bigger than this. You know, there's more to it than that. It wasn't until then we realised there was another half of the house, almost like semi-detached, but it looked like a detached house. Absolutely huge, you know, big farmhouse. It wasn't until then that we had to fight through another bunch of nettles and trees and other stuff to find another entrance to the second part of the house, which was in a lot better condition than the first parts of the house because no one had been in there for even longer than they'd been in this side. So back to the story. We you know there was this house, there was the other half of the house, there was an old garage, there was some old garages, some barns, an old truck stop where they'd work and repair on trucks. Then over there was like a ridge, and then over the ridge there was like a quarry which was, you know, a couple 100 meters deep. We didn't go down there. There was also some old quarry machinery, you know, diggers, bulldozers, so on. They were also interesting to photograph. So the first time we decided we're in the house and we decided we were going to go up the stairs. Now there was three of us, and it was put to a vote that I was the smallest and the lightest, so I would be the one who went up the stairs. Now, obviously, you look at the stairs in your home, and the stairs are attached to the wall, but there is also a support under the stairs where there's usually a cupboard or something. There was none of that here. That had all sort of collapsed and, you know, fallen down. So the stairs were literally free floating off the wall. I was like, I don't know, you know, what if they fell, you know, it could get quite hurt. My friend had a rifle. I don't know why he brought it with us. I think it was a prop for some photos we were doing. But he had a rifle with him, and I said, "Give me the rifle, and I will use it to test the step in front of me before I trod on it. You know, just in case it was going to fall straight through, I could be able to feel if it was rotten or it was solid." So, and I also stayed as close to the wall as possible to not put any, you know, unnecessary weight as far from the pivot point as possible. So I start going up the stairs, and we're in absolute pitch black in the middle of the countryside. So I climb on the first step. It's nice and safe, still on the ground practically. And then I get the rifle and I start tapping on the step ahead of me. And it seems solid enough, so I go up the next one. Keep tapping at the stairs. It seems solid. We're good. I'm getting a little more relaxed as I'm going up the stairs. So I get about halfway up, still tapping. And then I don't quite know what happened, but I leant on the trigger and pressed it. And it was, I say it was loaded. It didn't have any bullets in, but it was loaded. So out of nowhere, you know, anyone who's fired a rifle or been near a rifle when it's gone off, it's extremely loud. Now you imagine this at like 3 a.m. in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of an echoey abandoned house. No flashlights, no nothing, just the loudest noise you can imagine. And like, you know, firstly, I know, you know, if it was loaded, I would have nearly shot myself in the foot. But secondly, it's like, it was just enough to terrify all of us, you know, beyond, you know, it was already spooky, and we already didn't know what was up the stairs or what we were going to find. You know, anyone who goes into these places knows you could find anything in any room at any time. You know, there could be animals, there could be people, there could be homeless people, there could be a corpse, you know, and you literally don't know what you're going to find in these rooms. After the initial, you know, after my heart went back to a steady pace and I'd composed myself, I continued up the stairs, tapping the stairs as I went, proving that it was still safe to go. After I'd got up the top, my friends realised, okay, the stairs are stable, Chris hasn't shot himself in the foot, we're good. So we went upstairs, and there was some quite interesting rooms up there. Again, a lot better condition than the downstairs, because clearly a lot of people didn't want to go up the stairs when exploring the place because it, you know, it was unstable. So we get up there, and there's, you know, what you expect to find, 2 or 3 bedrooms, bathroom, so on. I was actually shooting in one of the rooms. Now, anyone who's familiar with abandoned houses, the corners of the rooms go first. I don't know why. It's probably because the joists, there's nothing, no support there. So the corners go out first, they drop out. But the carpets were still there and everything, still in, relatively good condition. There was still wallpaper on the walls. And I was shooting one of the rooms, and it was a relatively small room, and I wanted to get a slightly better angle. So I edge myself into a corner stupidly, and like I back up, and I literally just feel my foot go straight through the floor, and I'm like, oh god. I mean, luckily there was carpet there, and luckily, I didn't. The hole it produced wasn't too big, but I could have easily fallen through the floor there. So that's one story. I nearly shot myself in the foot. We created a lot of noise and a lot of commotion just trying to explore the place. So another tale. When me and my friend first started shooting here in 2007, we went to the house I told you about, the house on the land with the quad bike track. And we just, back then we were very, polite young men. And we would go and ask permission wherever possible, show people our work, give a business card, explain what we were doing just so we didn't get into any unnecessary trouble. So we went over to this house, knocked on the door, introduced ourselves, spoke to the owner of the house, gave him a business card, got his name, even got his telephone number. He said, if you ever coming up here, just drop me a text or a ring, just let me know. So I know you're up there, so if I see any lights or noises, I know it's you guys, I know not to call the police or get involved. So we did that whenever we'd go up, and it was fine for a long time. And one night we were up there, and we were up there for a long time. And then we were upstairs in this part of the house, and the front of the house, the windows were, the window frames were there, but there was no windows in them. And we're shooting, and then I see this really, really bright light coming in through the windows, and I'm like, what is that? And it's two lights, and it's a car, and it's beeping its horn very angrily. And we're like, oh, okay, there's someone here, and they're not very pleased with us. So we're like, okay, we'll go outside and see what they want. We're still early days, very naive, and hello, sir, we'll, let you know when we're here, so on, yada yada. And we obviously, it took us a while to get back down the stairs, get all our camera equipment, crawl back through the space in the back door, and get back to my car at the time. This was when I used to park on the property, like in front of the house. And when we got outside, the car had gone, and I was like, oh, it's gone. Did we imagine it, or they just drove off? So we start loading our gear back into the boot of my car. And out of nowhere, this sort of huge 4x4 comes sort of like skidding around the corner and coming, full speed towards my car. And I'm like, oh, we should probably step out from behind the back of my car just in case he slams straight into the front of it. Anyway, he sort of, almost handbrake turns in front of my car to block me in, gets out, slams his door, and starts screaming at us. What the hell are you doing? What are you doing up there? We're like, hi. His name was Roy. He got the nickname Raging Roy after this incident. And we're like, hi Roy, it's Chris and friend. And we're just shooting up at the house like we explained. And of course this is many years later now, and he'd forgotten all about us. And we're like, you said it was okay. And we were allowed to, and just drop you a text. Of course we dropped him a text, he changed his phone, of course, wires crossed. And he didn't seem to drop down from that level of anger for quite some time. He was convinced we were sort of setting fires or up to no good and so on. I believe they'd had a bit of trouble up there with trespassing and vandalizing, graffiti, fires, so on. So he was extremely angry, and we were trying to explain the best we could that he knew who we were. We'd asked him, we even said, we come and ask you. He was like, well, when was that? It was 2007. This might have been 2011, 2012 now. He's like, well, I don't remember that. And in the end, he calmed down, and he let us return to our business. But we were done anyway, so we were on our way out, and we sort of, come to the new understanding that Roy was not to be messed with. And so that's another tale from this location. Another interesting one, I actually almost gained a cat from this location. So one night I used to go out on my own a lot as well, to these kinds of places, when no one else was available. And this was one of the places that I felt most comfortable at because I knew it well. I knew the area, I knew where to park, and so on. So I went up and I was shooting this place, and I was shooting some of the garages outside. And I could hear some noise, some little rustling and that, and I was like, what's that noise? So I go to investigate, and I could hear this little meowing. Meow. I was like, that's a cat. And so I go into one of the garages, and it was very overgrown by this point, full of nettles and brambles and stuff. So I had to sort of fight through to this noise. I get there, and there's this nice little tricolored cat, and oh, hello, what are you doing here? So I picked him up and I got him out of the. I think he was stuck, and he seemed hungry and a bit desperate and trapped. So I got him out and I took him back to my camera bag and I gave him a stroke and everything. He seemed to be happy that I'd saved him. So that was it. I was like, well, there's no one else around here. He must be lost or abandoned or something. So I took him home with me, put him in my car. He sat on my knee the entire way home, and I went in, showed my mum and dad. They weren't too pleased I'd brought a cat home. we fed him and housed him for the night, and then the day after, when it was light again, I took him back and tried to find out who he belonged to, and of course, it belonged to Raging Roy. He was not too pleased I'd stolen his cat either. So and I was like, "Hey, is this your cat?" He's like, "Yeah, what are you doing with my cat?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I found it up there last night." "What are you doing up there?" And yeah, he wasn't too pleased I'd stolen his cat. And I was like, he was trapped up there. I didn't know it belonged to. I just, I fed it and that, and brought it back. And I guess he was appreciative in the end. But yeah, not too pleased at the start. One last tale from this location. We were there one night. We'd made up our camp like we usually do, and we were shooting and so on, and we could hear these noises, and familiar noises, those noises that sound like gunshots. And we're like, that's quite close. And my friend grew up like on a farm, or his grandparents were farmers or something. He sort of knew these things. He's like, I think it's just a hunter, but night hunting, and anyone who does night hunting is experienced in the field, or poaching. And the noises got closer and closer and further away and so on, and we'd even hear and see like rabbits running around and so on, and we'd hear more shots, and we just decided at that point that it'd be best to leave and avoid getting shot once again. So yeah, that's a couple of tales from Jim Barry's, and obviously the process behind the image. Hope everyone's thoroughly enjoyed it. There'll be another episode along very soon. Goodbye.